Chapter 13. While the astounded sheriff examined the metal badge that was sewn into the pseudo-cattle buyer's vest, Sam and Ezra digested its import with incredulous eyes. "Not Fat Raleigh," protested Sam, finally finding his voice. "There ain't no two ways about it," pronounced Pat. "Look at the badge and the cuffs." But he's closer to LaRoe and Silky than their shirts," pointed out Sam, still unconvinced. Well, that was his play. Light was breaking in the sheriff's mind. Raleigh was an undercover man planted ahead. Looked like he was mighty close to locating the loot. Nels or LaRoe had gotten wise and told the fat man up to the Circle L and then fed him a dose of lead. Pat's eyes softened as he gazed at the limp, fleshy form. Raleigh had guts aplenty. He'd wormed his way into the renegade gang, well knowing that one slip would mean his finish, and, well, he finally slipped. Ezra's deep voice broke into the sheriff's thoughts. He nodded at the dead detective. "Played a lone hand and lost the trick. Well, just as well try to corral a jackrabbit in these here hills as round up the coyote who downed him." 100 eyes followed the little cavalcade that rode into town, while Raleigh's remains flopped across the saddle. The town was still agog with the jail break-in affray of the previous night. Pat sensed that his prestige has dropped plenty. Well, he thought grimly, the last card ain't been played yet. They towed the body to the shed behind the mercantile store that served as a mortuary. Already it was jam-packed with victims of the overnight riot. Jake Pierce shouldered along the plank walk as they emerged and hastened down the alleyway that led to the morgue. "You bringin' Raleigh in?" His voice was husky with concern. Pat nodded. "Who got him?" "He was bushwhacked by Nels Larson." The detective swore deep in his throat. "Raleigh was hot, too," he muttered, "but the doggone mule wouldn't run in harness. He was hell-bent to go it alone." He raised his voice. "What say you spill the story?" Pat told of trailing Larson and Raleigh to the Circle L, finding Raleigh wounded, the bushwhack bullet. "And before we go ahead," he concluded curtly, "you best spread your hand, Jake. You got any more undercover men around here? Silky, for instance?" The Pinkerton man shook his head. "No, not one that you'd know. Raleigh was always a lone wolf. He was stalking the reward money. Reckon those snake-blooded hairpins outguessed him. Any chance on pulling in Larson?" "Not as long as he rides clear of town. Nels, he was born in those hills. We'd never corral the buzzard in his own country. I'd gamble the loot's been cached up there, too." Jake gave out in disgust. "Seems like we're butting into a rock wall. First Blondie's knocked out, and then Maggie breaks jail, and now Larson plugs my best man, and we ain't undercovered a dollar from those two payrolls." He shrugged. "Well, guess we best get on with the job. So long." He moved down the alleyway and mingled with the throng on the plank walk. Bill North ducked through the fly curtain that draped the low framed door of June Larson's tiny pie shop. Cool and serene as always, the girl regarded her visitor with appraising eyes. Since the episode of Maggie's visit to the jail, North had steered clear of the pie shop. "Hello, June," he grinned. "Long time no see." "I'm open every day." Her voice was unconcerned. "Let's let bygones be bygones," he begged. "I've been awfully busy since they gave me the paymaster's job. The payroll came through today, which Means I've been sweating over timesheets all night."
"Well guarded, I hope."
There was a material note in June's clear voice. "I'll say the yard's overrun with armed men. They took no chances this time. Had a pilot engine ahead with the pay train, and the deputies packed like sardines into the booth." The tone of the young paymaster's voice changed. "Let's forget that beastly railroad. This is goodbye, June." Her eyes widened.
"Goodbye?"
"Yeah, I've quit the Chicago and Rio Grande. I've always hated the job. Now, I'm gonna go make some money. Big money." The girl smiled faintly.
"I like to make money, too. May I share the secret?"
North glanced quickly around, his voice lowered. "The steel's almost through the valley. In 3 months, Dutch Springs is gonna be a ghost town. They'll jump the construction camp to Indian Flats 30 miles to the north. Got the tip from a pal at headquarters." His voice vibrated with eagerness. "And look what happened here. It'll be the same story all over again. Land will skyrocket, and I'm in on ground break. Maybe I can make $1 million. He paused, breathless.
"That's gambler's gold," smiled June.
"What do I care?"
"It's like quicksilver. It's hard to hold."
North smiled. "You watch me." June pursed her lips.
"Perhaps," she said thoughtfully, "it isn't goodbye."
"You mean you'd come?" began North excitedly. The girl smiled faintly.
"Don't be jumping to conclusions. I can't sell pies in the empty air. Will you buy me some good lots in Indian Flats, Bill?"
"And you'll follow the camp?"
"Perhaps."
Her voice was tantalizing. North leaned quickly over the narrow counter and grasped the girl's shoulders with both hands. "Say, June, if I make a killing up there, would you... Her eyes met his, burning with eagerness, placidly shrugged free.
"Bill!"
There was a sharp note in her voice.
"Please remember that I'm still married. Later, perhaps."
His hands dropped reluctantly. "Sometimes you remind me of a marble statue. Beautiful, but no more emotion than a block of ice." He turned towards the door.
"Wait!"
cried June. She stepped back at the partition that screened off the kitchen, reappeared with a heavy leather pouch. Coins clinked as she dropped it on the counter.
$1,000 in gold," she said calmly, "to buy business lots. And give me a receipt, please."
"Gee," whistled Bill. "That's some real money in pies. You're an amazing girl, June, and elusive as a shadow, damn it." He pocketed the pouch and penciled the receipt upon the writing tablet she pushed towards him. "And now how about a kiss for some good luck?" June held out a cold right hand.
"Goodbye and good luck, Bill."
She spoke as impersonally as if selling a pie. Deep inside, something irked Bill North as he pushed through the clamor of Main Street and headed for the yard. He was treading the ties below his office when he realized just what it was. Not June's tremid response to his advances, or even the cool reminder that she was still married, but her insistence upon a receipt for the $1,000 in gold that weighed in his coat pocket. The longer he considered her request, the more he became irritated. True, it was wholly reasonable and businesslike, but it was plain proof that the blue-eyed June didn't trust him. Or else, why should she demand a written proof that she had given him the money? June's a businesswoman, he told himself, angry at his own discontent. She's had a hard struggle, and that pouch of gold is probably all she has to show for weeks of toil in front of a hot stove. But still, the memory rankled. Valise in hand, he stepped aboard the big yellow Concorde. The usual crowd of lawyers gathered around when it jostled to a stop on Broad Leather Springs outside the Jewel Hotel. Saginaw Sam, the whiskered driver, wound the lines around the brake lever and jumped down. He grabbed the valise and pitched it into the boot. North sank back against the cozy cushions. It felt good to be out of Dutch Springs with its booze and clamor and killing. Good, too, to be free of that railroad job where a fellow wore out his eyes and nervous system for the pittance of Chicago and Rio Grande paid, while all around him astute men were piling up fortunes. Gambler's gold, June had called it. Smart girl, that. She was right. The railroad gambled millions on pushing steel through the overland. The motley army of construction laborers gambled their lives on the job and their hard-earned dollars in their brief hours of ease. The proprietors of the saloons and joints gambled their wits, and the quickest-witted cleaned up. He was through with watching other men making money. He'd grab his share, and Indian Flat was a good place to begin. That tip from Chicago had given him a head start on the wise guys. He would be a fool if he didn't cash in. Conscious of the vast content, the young paymaster gazed out of the little square window of the stage at the plank walk along which a tightly packed group of laborers eddied back and forth, joking and shouting with full pockets and abiding thirsts. Poor fellows, he thought. For 100 tomorrows they'd be toiling in the scorching heat of the plains for their pitiful paychecks while he'd be in the money. Saginaw's whip cracked and the iron-bound wheels bit into the grit. As the stage started rolling, the door swung open and a tall man in a white linen duster flung in. With distaste, North recognized Leroux, owner of the bucket of blood. The saloon man's features were still marred with the impact of the sheriff's hard fist. One eye was partly closed, and Wadden was secured by plaster on each side of his thin nose. He subsided on the cushions opposite North with a gasp of relief. His small eyes started over the big features of this fellow passenger and registered quick surprise. He nodded curtly, pulled a cigar from an inside pocket, bit off the end, and lit up. "You going far?" Leroux's high-pitched voice rasps on North's nerves. "Going to Indian Flats," he replied shortly. Damn the fellow's inquisitiveness. No sense in lying to him, though. He'd find out later, and it might arouse his suspicions. Leroux chewed his cigar. "Aren't you with the railroad?" "I quit." "Well, ain't much for a bright young feller like you in Indian Flats." The saloon keeper's focused, searching eyes on the young man's features. North stifled his growing anger. This dive keeper reminded him of a buzzard with his hooded eyes and curved nose, except that he was picking pockets instead of flesh. Caution warned him to keep his temper. A false move, and Leroux would scent his motive for the trip. "Well, anything for a change," he returned lightly. "Where are you heading?" "Indian Flat," rasped Leroux, his thin lips twisting maliciously. "For the same reason that you are." Cold premonition gripped North. For a change of scenery? His tone was guarded. Leroux laughed. "Hell no, to buy land." Quick denial leapt to the young fellow's lips to be checked at the sight of the derisive amusement in the saloon keeper's eyes. "How do you know?" He began lamely, then stopped at Leroux's chuckle. "Young feller, you ain't played much poker. You quit the road in a hell of a hurry and hit the stage for Indian Flats. I just put one and one together, and they make Indian Flats the new construction camp. Me, I was riding up to visit a lady friend, and now I reckon it'll be mighty a profitable trip. Thanks for the tip. It's worth 10,000 to me." Mentally, North cursed his luck in riding with the saloon keeper. Now the seeker was out, the wolf pack would dash for the flat, to grab sights for their dives and dance halls. What a fool, he told himself bitterly, to allow the quick-witted Leroux to worm the secret out of him so easily. Leroux's nasal tones cut into his chagrined silence. Maybe we could make us a deal. We're gonna chance to corner all the land around Indian Flats, and there's a mint of money in it. I like you, and you got guts, if'n you ain't got savvy. North, already hot under the collar, exploded. See here, he grated. I detest you and the buzzard like you who clean out the pockets of the poor devils who lay steal. I'll mind my business, and I'll thank you to keep your long nose, well, what pat left of it, keep it out of my affairs. A flush tinged on the saloon man's shallow features. His eyes glinted, but his cigar glowed as evenly as ever. So that's how it is. His voice was mocking. You're too Simon Pure for the likes of me. How come you got coin to buy land anyway? North's big fist nodded. Another crack like that, Leroux, and I'll be closing that other eye. The other smoked silently, calculating eyes steady on North's angry face. Not another word passed between them on the dusty 30-mile trip to Indian Flat. Creaking and swaying, the stage left the level prairie and wound up the flank of the low ridge, rattled over the boulders of the narrow canyon, and dropped into a discouraged cow town simmering beneath the gaunt cottonwoods. Saginaw hauled his team to a standstill before a graying structure which a sign protruded and proclaimed to be the Traveler's Rest. North stepped into the dust and gazed curiously around. The Traveler's Rest was the only two-story building in sight. Across the widening of the wagon road that formed the only street, he saw a tumble-down saloon and a barber shop. A wagon was drawn up outside a long, squat building labeled McAllister's General Store and Post Office. Along the road squatted a few frame buildings and tin-roofed shacks. And that was all there was to Indian Flats. Looked like June's $1,000 would buy the entire town, thought North, as he toted his valise into the bare lobby of the Traveler's Rest. A white-haired old feller slowly hauled his bent frame out of a rocker, hobbled behind a counter, and pushed a well-thumbed register forward. Conscious of Leroux's form in the background, North signed hastily, the ancient carelessly lifting the first bunch of keys dangling from a nail. "Number 3, he wheezed. "That'll be $2. North dropped the coins on the counter, regarded the labeled key with a quizzical amusement. "You sure this is the right key?" he inquired. "They're all the same," snapped the oldster. "Saves time and trouble." North picked up his bag and mounted a stairwell. At its head was the usual corridor with rudely numbered doors like a row of cells. He entered number 3, threw open the window to circulate the hot, stagnant air. This done, he dumped his valise on the iron bedstead and eyed the cracked pitcher and battered dresser, and then scaled his hat towards the valise. Then he sat gingerly in the more substantial of the 2 straight-back chairs to consider his plan of camping. Better go slow, he mused, or those musty old-timers will smell a rat. He heard Leroux's footsteps on the bare stairwell, his quick, nervous steps along the corridor. Outside they paused. The door eased open slightly, and the saloon man's detented features appeared. "Just bought the hotel, North," he rasped. "Thought I'd put you wise and save your time." The door closed with a bang and rattled the partitions. In stunned surprise, the young fellow gazed at the painted door. He heard Leroux enter a room further down the corridor, grabbed his hat off the bed, and headed off for the sun-swept street. End of chapter 13.